not fight alone.
Welcome back to HGC as we get ready for Game 3 of a series that has been all about the globals so far. A lot of Dahaka, a lot of Falstad, and a lot of running around the battlegrounds.
A lot of running around on the battlegrounds.
Yep.
You know, both teams have had moments, you know, when they've had the upper hand and unable to maybe push the envelope as far as they necessarily could have. But maps like Sky Temple, I feel like Even in Death played that about as good as they can.
Yep.
I feel like they played overly safe, but you can't blame them because, again, their thought process was they were always making the right choice. It was just maybe they weren't getting as much as they could have.
Yeah, they had such a lead that it made a lot of sense that they would focus on just being able to take out all the structures and then do what they could to work it themselves into a favorable checkmate situation. But I'm ready for some brawling, so let's see if we can get a battleground that enables that a little bit more. We got Inferno Shrines, that's a good start.
You know, it's funny you say that, because when I actually feel like when I think of brawling, I think of Sky at the top. Though we didn't maybe necessarily get it into the last game.
Yeah, me too.
I always feel like that is maybe one of the top brawling maps, and Shrine is one of those ones that can be slow, steady, not too much skirmishing here. But I think you're right. We probably will see a lot of battling here. Up on Infernal Shrines, I expect still traditional globals being a high priority for both sides, specifically the Dahaka. Illidan, in fact, is going to be the same priority. The Genji may drop a little bit, but probably more on the side of Naventic than that of Even in Death.
Maybe some Sonya for one of the teams. That would be nice and brawly. I'm ready. I was not ready for that, though. Oh, I wanted some Illidan play. But you gotta respect Homicidal's Illidan, I suppose.
Tassadar, no surprise to be removed. Naventic, do you go with the Genji, or is it the Dahaka or the Uther? Which of those three? Genji is the answer. So do we still see the traditional Uther and Dahaka out of Even in Death, or do they go a different direction? Uther, again, we expect. Dahaka is, again, because the Illidan ban on the side of Naventic. It's not the only reason, but it makes it more appealing. I've never seen that. Stitches directly after. I'm missing it. Who is it? Ariel or Greymane, right? Because the first game, did we see Greymane there?
It was Greymane Arthas, but it was because it was Even in Death.
Oh, yeah, that was the other way around. Sorry, I'm crazy. So then, yeah, is this going to be the Ariel?
I would like the change-up of Greymane here. Good Shrine hero for them to have.
I think if I was going to choose one of the mix-up, I would take the Lunara. We were talking about last game that got banned out in this position because the prepping of having the Lunara to be able to aid the Genji. Because Lunara, I don't want to say she's a better version of Malthael, because I don't think that's true, because they do fill very different roles, but they do have the common element of like prepping the kills and doing large amount of damage and helping those double resets, and it's more reliable.
She is a safer version of that.
Yeah, she's safer.
Spear happens far more often than Tormented Souls.
Very much so.
As well. So it makes sense to want to get Lunara there. I don't know. There's several different picks that Naventic could have in this last pick before we go into secondary bans.
Falstad.
And it's none of the things that we mentioned.
That way, if they ban out, you know, the Anuber, or excuse me, if they ban out the Lunara here for Even in Death, they no longer have the Falstad to be for a fear of a Malthael, and then go in the Malthael direction. And it's going to actually be way more appealing. The last game, I don't even know if we actually got an entire, like, we got one Tormented Soul the entire game. But now, a lot of that was because fear of Falstad. You know, once it got the inevitable end, it's still a double-edged sword. I might end up, like, actually getting myself out of position by using that choice. But we'll see where Even in Death wants to go with this secondary ban.
They could ban the Malthael here.
If they have no intent of picking up Arthas would be another good ban. It does work with a lot of the heroes Naventic has.
I think they'll get Arthas.
Yeah, I think they will too. But just throwing it out, you know, if they decide, it's not our pickup, it would be a smart deletion just because it is synergistic and it complements a map like Shrines.
The only thing is potentially, I guess, if they want to make sure they have a Nubarak again for Cocoon to try to deal with Genji, deal with the Stitches too. But no double Genji.
I don't have any problems with that Abathur ban, but I didn't expect Even in Death versus Naventic to be the place where you saw that come out. I mean, I'm a huge advocate for the Slug and any map where he is viable, and I'm absolutely terrified of him, but I didn't think Naventic would be the team, you know, to bust out the Abathur too often. But Even in Death's taking no risks here today. They respond with the Greymane ban. Arthas what? Arthas Greymane traditionally would be the rotation you would expect, so do they want to go in any other route?
Ariel is still up. They still need to, well, I guess they have Uther, and they have been going away from that double support Vala.
I don't hate the idea of it, though. Going to the Vala Ariel right now is very good on a map like Infernal Shrines. It just puts a lot of pressure on Even in Death on the early game. And To be honest, out of what we've seen in this series as well, though, like on maps like Dragon Shard, when they're expected to get something out of the early game that doesn't involve just killing the opponent, they do seem to not gain as much as maybe they would like to. Which is oftentimes what you expect out of that Ariel composition with that trifecta. Got 9 seconds remaining. Anub
and Ariel.
And the Ariel. So not the Arthas route, but in fact into the Anub, which we'll see if Naventic wants to go into the Arthas. It's not necessary for them to be able to do so, but if they end up picking it up, it could be very scary just because, again, with that Stitches, with that Genji, and he's good on the map.
Looking at the Stitches now, there are a lot of heroes who will be able to deal with the Stitches at least. Try to drag him out of place. They've got a lot of crowd control again. They seem to really like having a lot of these crowd control heroes. And they still have options for who they want to have as the battery, but it's likely that they'll go back into Vala for Lutano. For Team Naventic, though, Malthael once again.
Yeah, the false set early on really, for me, screams the Malthael for Naventic. Trying to be able to root that up, but what are they going to go for supports? It's the Malfurion. Second time we've got to see Tomster onto that hero. Looking forward to see the synergy there between all of them. Once again, though, Naventic has an extremely R-button focused composition. When they start pressing their R buttons, they need the fight in that exact moment. They want the fight in that exact moment, and is going to be on even in death on doing their best to avoid the one-shot between the heroes. I will say that I think Malfurion's the best support into double support out of all of them because of his AoE silence. He has the most opportunity of ensuring something is going to die. So I do like that here for Naventic. But it is a bit, you know, they have an old school composition, but Even in Death has really shown to be pretty scary with the double supporting.
Yeah, and Even in Death has a composition that can be resilient against the all-in of Team Naventic.
Yeah.
If they're able to survive with things like potentially a Divine Storm once again, but as well a Divine Shield, they have a Crystal Aegis too, just a lot of coordination between those two supports. They get through things like the Tormented Soul, Gust, Putrebile, and Genji and Malfurion, which, man, there's just so much synergy there. But if they can get through that, then they'll be able to heal themselves back up because they have the Uther as backup for the Ariel and then Vala behind.
To be completely honest, I feel like if Naventic just offensive Gus, every fight is not even close. But if they failed to use offensive Gus and get like Even in Death in that type of position to Gus them all in, it could be a lot more difficult. It's again that situation where the trifecta enjoys approaching fights left to right and it not being flank oriented because they need it over time is what they want to make. They want to cycle multiple heals and then you're like, I can't keep up with them because they have 2 and I have 1. But the Gus can change it all. You're not going to see the Stitches hook dance. Like if we see one huge flight, one Gus into a dream, there's no world where this game should be close. It's like watch Genji like, oh, just killing everybody, and then suddenly the whole team is dead. So I really feel like just Naventic, if they do not approach left or right, Even in Death will struggle.
Yeah, Even in Death wants to have those warriors as the front line to zone people off, pull people away so that Vala can just poke here and there and allow the supports to keep them up through the damage. Let's see how it will work out. We're heading into game number 3 on Infernal Shrines between Even in Death and Team Naventic, and we're all tied up.
We started on the red, but we went back to the blue. I got excited for a moment. You know, I've never actually started on the red side. Have you ever started on the red side? Out of, I think, all my years of commentating, I say all my years, it's like a total of 1. But in that amount of time, I have never started on the red side.
You're into year 2 now.
Are we?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. We are. We're in the process, but I haven't been casting for 2 years,
That's
you know?
true.
What a pleb.
You'll get there someday, youngster, young whippersnapper.
We got the Moonbird. Rare talent here in North America. Going to be represented there for Tomster. A lot of wave clear potential coming out from him. Huge advocate of the talent.
Region Master for a new Barak. It's a pretty easy battleground to be able to build up globe talent. So in this case, trying to focus on making sure that he has a lot more health and healthy region with, again, all the damage that Team Naventic can put out.
Front wall is going to be the focus for both teams. It's really just going to be an even trade. And the question we ask here is really not who gets the front walls first, who gets them at all. It's more of who loses the most experience afterwards. Suna, for a moment, maybe falling a bit too low. Front wall down, and who lost the most?
Even in Death is continuing to push in, and Naventic is here. Genji has shown up. Even in Death still feels confident that they can stay here with the double support as long as Lutano is safe. Zuna did sustain a lot of damage early on, trying to tank and zone. Hook will hit the root follow-up as well. No, not too much damage just yet to be able to follow up with that, especially with Genji being the primary damage dealer along with the warrior support.
And knowing that Tomster has been less prone to playing heroes like the Malfurion out of the support role, got to keep eyes on where those roots are ended up placed. Like, for instance, that was about 2 clicks to the right. A part of your screen, a way to be able to get that root. You have to set it immediately as the hook is going to land underneath the feet in front of Stitches to get it pixel perfect. But you can make the argument setting it 1 pixel out will allow the hook to land. They'll register a click in, and then they will immediately get afterwards. But those are the 2 places you want to be able to drop that root. It's not very difficult to be able to make that happen. Much like the Lunar Flare, it's pretty predictable. If anything, it's more predictable. It's going to be on him after that 4, getting that Loon's Grace to hit those, unlike that very first one.
Battery is here. Level 4 is available for Team Naventic, and there is, actually has not picked a Loon's Grace just yet, making sure that he can have the supporting available for the team. Dodging the counter hook that would have pulled someone into the fort range. But Even in Death have shown to not have too much focus on the shrine up in the top yet. They know that they have already taken a lot of, or dealt a lot of damage to the fort in the bottom, and they're hoping they might just be able to take it out.
Nice root there that time from Tomster, but it's not really going to, you know, be as scary as they were hoping it to be. The members of Even in Death just flat out are not afraid of Naventic whatsoever with this trifecta down below.
Yeah, it's 10 when Naventic gets excruciatingly scary. So Even in Death trying to make sure that before Naventic gets to that point, Even in Death have done enough damage to carry them into being ahead into the late game.
And this is exactly what I was talking about in the draft that Even in Death failed to be able to do on the map like Dragonshire. So the fact that they're showing that much pressure here, I want to say is impressive. But we have to remember, they got half of a fort for free starting wave number 1. How much did they actually make happen in that downtime? Not very much. So
Nope.
like, I do want to be like, I am so proud at the idea of the pressure they were willing to be able to apply here for Even in Death. But once again, they found themselves in a circumstance where realistically it wasn't that much to be gained, but there in the mid for that first blood very much is.
It's still great for them though, because they know that they're, for the most part, going to need to stick together when they go to a shrine. They really just have Dahaka to split away, and otherwise they want to have Battery along with Vala and the 2 supports together. And it would take away from them a lot in the early game to have to rotate all of them up to the shrine. So it's just much better for them to try to get any sort of advantage structurally on the board and get ahead of Naventic before they can get those heroic abilities. But Naventic is just trying to keep up with Even in Death. They really haven't been sending anybody to the shrine either.
Yeah, it's a bit of a game of chicken here, but again, the structures gained by Even in Death are so very worth it. Battery, though, drops that burrow charge away, but it doesn't matter. There is enough damage there, a reset for big impact. And now we see Beakhead looking to join in on some of the fun. Conveniently, though, the fort still stands here into the mid lane, and Even in Death walk away with only 1 member lost.
So now what do Even in Death do? They did lose Battery. And what happens from there? The shrine still up in top lane, but both teams happy to just get some mercenary camps and save it for later on.
Yeah, I really do feel like the whose job is it to start the camp for the most part is going to be that of Naventic, but now because front wall on bottom's been taken, front wall on mid's been taken, Even in Death now can go up there, start the shrine, control it, and the downtime when they're winning the fight over Naventic, take out the front wall, back out and get onto the shrine. Really, everything is working out so far for Even in Death at this point. Yes, they are behind a little bit into that experience department because they're committing so much to the pressure, but structurally they can open up the map if they get this objective very effectively, again, because what they made happen through bottom and through mid so early on in this game.
No, they don't have Dahaka here, whereas all the members of Naventic are here. As long as Even in Death can play this out. Hook, though, and roots immediately afterward. Lutano stays alive from the double supporting, even with big impact off to the side, throwing out the kunai takedown off of a drag as Homicidal comes in, takes out Stitches, and there will be 18 more seconds with no Stitches on the board where Even in Death can get back to shrine clearing.
Yeah, such a great job there from Even in Death. The fact that they were willing to kind of bait out Lutano on that Vala so very low. The Homicidal comes in, make sure they get the conversion back, and now Naventic is struggling once more. They're going to lose themselves the very first Punisher into this game. 2 members of Naventic trying to get that pressure out through mid. But it's what can Even in Death make happen with this Punisher. Even going with the 39 stall. Respect everything that's going on right now for Even in Death. Very good decision making here.
Again, making sure that every wall is down. There's going to be another hook. This time Battery has to jump in alongside, try to save Frozen X. Rosenex doesn't have the Reaper's Mark on it anymore, so it's not as much of a threat for B-Kid.
Kyle was trying to look for that Hammer of Justice, just barely out of range was going to be Tomster. It looks like they have now decided now is the time. Once Naventic picks up the 10 mark, but they've got 10 closing in just a fraction of a second.
Hal built into Silver Touch as well as Holy Shock, so he can lend to a little bit more damage for the team. And that's interesting. No Strafe this time as a Rain of Vengeance. Maybe as a potential follow-up now for the Punisher if there's a Punisher Leap as well as the damage. But even still, too, for lockdown for heroic abilities. And heroics are now up for Team Naventic. Do we see Falstad fly behind the team? So far, no. Everyone just wants to clear out this Punisher.
I was going to say that these are the moments that Even in Death has to second guess their composition when they're sieging with the Punishers, because that is when they're most likely to not expect the flank, not expect the Falstad to come in, be able to hit that Gus into the Dream, Tormented Souls, and Dragon Blade out of Team Naventic. Also, we don't know if this is Gorge or Bile yet.
May have a Gorge. Still waiting on that. No, there's no isolation for Even in Death. This does mean that Dahaka doesn't have as many health bars for if he possibly does get ganked. And it will be terrifying if he gets ganked because there is still Touch of Death for Malthael. But trying to make sure that he has another way of trying to mitigate what Naventic has. Pull apart the composition of Team Naventic, of these heroes that are terrifying in team fights with Rain of Vengeance. They also have Cocoon again, Crystal Aegis, and now Isolation. That might be the reason why we still saw Divine Shield then, too.
They have made, yeah, the Divine Shield due to the isolation is going to be, I feel like, a huge one there. I mean, anytime that, because you don't want Ariel to ever have to worry about the front line. Here comes out a Gorge. Cocoon immediately coming out. Divine Shield is going to be used on Lutano. Keeping pressure there with the Rain of Vengeance onto iDream. Now the flank coming out from Homicidal after that Rain. Tomster unable to get himself a Twilight Dream, and Naventic now on full retreat.
That was absolutely brilliant of Even in Death. Just exactly the way that you would want to see that fight play out on their side. How they were able to Cocoon to get Lutano out, Divine Shield so that Lutano can sit right where they would like to, or where he would like to, and throw out damage, to Tame and Strike as well. Everything perfect for Even in Death in that fight, getting 2 takedowns, and finally clearing out the fort in the bottom, and look where the shrine is going to spawn.
Nicely there, on to the bottom half of the map. Nobody's going to have their shamans pushing out on top. Nobody too worried about some of the split pressure. A lot of people are going to be attending the shrine party. We're going to have the next couple of seconds. Naventic still without the 13 talents here, but it's realistic that they'll be able to have it during the shrine. Question usually is how many skeletal defenders are they going to lose in the downtime? And conveniently, because Even in Death is considering picking up that camp beforehand, not too many is going to be the answer to that question.
Even in Death with their 13. Start up the shrine for a Mortar Punisher. Team Naventic is not far behind, and they have Falstad doing the soaking game just as Even in Death have their Dahaka doing the same. 20 skeletal defenders before Team Naventic gets 13. And we'll look toward moving into the shrine. This does put some pressure on them to make something happen quickly so that they can get the kills necessary to turn the shrine around. iDream is flown in.
Meaning there's going to be no flank opportunity. The fight will be a little bit more difficult here for Naventic to be able to achieve. Stitches does not land with that hook. Root used there once again out of faith.
29 against the 10. B-Kid's starting to go in. There's the Tormented Souls. Immediate Cocoon afterward too.
He has Inevitable in, just didn't use it before, so now that is going to be a major setback for Naventic into this teamfight. Twilight Dream ended up being dropped.
No, it was stopped by Battery. Yeah, Burrow charging in.
I was like, nobody's silenced. What happened there? 2 seconds and Twilight Dream's back online. Zuno landed the hook onto Battery. Dream goes. Aegis is now hit.
But B-Kid's still in the back. This time he doesn't have Tormented Souls. Even in Death may just be able to turn that around. And realizing how close Even in Death were to being able to get the Punisher, Team Naventic had to leave. Even in Death once again makes it through all the heroic abilities. Inevitable End used, as well as the hook friendly. What the heck?
What's up?
Helping Hand, there you go. I was like, friendly hand, that doesn't seem right.
I feel when you ask your co-commentator about talent names, you know you've really done gifts whenever
that's not a talent.
Whenever you're the one doing it.
Not a talent anymore.
Yeah, that's true. Punisher
Safe.
over the wall. Let's see what Even in Death can make happen here. 42 and counting. It looks like Keep from Wall is all she's going to get in a full level in the experience department. Just gotta say it. You know, the first time we saw it, these fights are going to be like this all game if inevitable end is not hit by BK. I mean, that's the only reason, not the only reason, but the major reason you commit to that talent into the 13th department, into the Cocoon. You should just be expecting the minute I hit R, I hit 1 at the exact same time.
That is the primary purpose. The Gorge is going to come in immediately. Once again, the counter Cocoon gets How out of danger. Battery can always burrow charge underneath the wall if necessary. But Homicidal's here too. Tormented Souls getting on top of Battery. That'll proc him to go out, but the hook pulls him back into the fight.
They have Aegis, and they have Divine Shield in a second. They
Gus
can still win this fight. They have double support,
Gus
Gilly.
is already down. The Rain of Vengeance hit too and hit a whole bunch of people. Isolation has hit Malfurion, but Battery still is getting so low. Look at that.
But look at, they can clean up if they were just willing to take the fight. Lutano, Homicidal, How, every single person sitting at a lot of HP was afraid to move through that choke. Specifically, Lutano was the individual who should be responsible of moving in with that, because you're the reason Frozen X can be able to get out of those kills. But now Naventic was able to still pick off a kill there after that amazing hook after the burrow charge away. They are showing signs of life still in this game, but nowhere near even in the experience department. Still about that 3/4 deficit, and at this stage, that is very, very relevant.
There's no Blinding Flash this time for Ario, instead getting Repelling Strike to try to have a better knockback. Just everything that Even and Death are doing build-wise is try to make sure that they can control the fights and not let Naventic get the fights that they want. And so far, that has worked out for them. Team Naventic are not too far off from 16, but it's enough that Even and Death should once again be able to get these Shaman, get 16, and get started on the Shrine in a way that Naventic is forced into the exact same situation they were with the last Shrine, which is that they have to force a fight if they have any chance of taking the Shrine away.
Both of the Shaman cannons up on top. Paul said looks like he has shown a lot of interest in being able to rid of that and benefiting Naventic's Shaman into the long run. Instead, ignoring it, he's going to move down to the Shrine. So it shows that Naventic very much is concerned about getting this Punisher for themselves.
Yeah, and they caught up on experience far faster than I gave them credit for, too. So they're not far behind at all with the Skeletal Defenders.
The Dahaka is yet to be able to get the burrow in. Homicidal questioning what he wants to make happen. How moving in from the side. Lutano gets the aggressive bolt. There goes the Gorge and the Gust. But I don't know if this is what they necessarily wanted. That is just in a new Barak. Twilight Dream is used, and everybody was missed. That beautiful dodge from Homicidal by getting the burrow into the ground and then burrow charging away. Nobody was hit by the Twilight Dream. 3 heroics down for Naventic and nothing to be able to claim for their own. Even losing B-Kid there. Now the burrow charge right on in. Rain of Vengeance hitting the ground. And Even in Death is just bodying Naventic.
Look at Lutano pop off! Did you see him chase down B-Kid? Gets pulled back in by the hook, but even after he went down, gets the Divine Shield and keeps on pushing. Takes out 4 people. Only Genji left. My goodness, Even in Death. You guys are monsters.
That was such a beautiful fight from their end, identifying misplay one after the other on the side of Naventic and then completely punishing, going, this is a cooldown they need. This guy's way out of position. We're going to be able to move in and make things happen, and 4 kills for nothing.
I guarantee you at this moment, Battery was like, guys, it's me in here. That's fine. The burrow with Tunneling Claws and getting out as well was Battery. And then that is just about everything that Naventic needed. They still had Tormented Souls here, but so much was used in that moment. Watch Lutano.
Yeah, he's just going. Gets dragged back, and he's not done. He's like, I got Divine Shield. I'm going on Tom Serve. There we go. Detainment Strike coming out from Frozen X, prepping the next. You could just see them going once Battery in Homicidal was able to dodge that Twilight Dream. You could see Even in Death going, wait a minute, they're still sticking around. Like, they actually want to fight this. Let's go. You know, Battery, though, a bit too far out here. Nobody's looking to save him. Frozen X not even willing to sacrifice the Aegis. No surprise.
Hal's going to have to go down, too, at this point. And run the opposite direction just to make sure that it gets enough time for everybody else to escape. So Even in Death getting excited off of that victory. Push in, do take out a keep though. They still get a keep, they still have a level lead.
Yeah, not only do they have a level lead, they have every fort still like to exist, minus that of on top. So now Naventic is doing their best, going around, trying to open up the map, but it's not one of those cases where you're like, okay, this is the late game deaths that Even in Death gave up, and now Naventic can get the punishment backwards. Because Naventic has been unable to really make too much happen structurally throughout this entire game, we're not looking at that case. At least they are managing to get mid fort. Bottom fort probably is going to be the secondary focus for themselves. And the experience will be closer to even than it is in the current state.
Naventic doing their best to take down some of the forts and make sure that should they win another fight, or at least get the picks that they were able to get in the last instance, they're able to do more with it than just take out some forts, as well as catch up in experience. Yes, it is unfortunate that Naventic still had forts to go through, but in the spot where they were so far behind in experience, it does give them some ways of being able to climb back into that fight of trying to get to 20. And they can hopefully catch some of the members of Even and Death out here in this amount of time, although Cocoon once again is going to let Hao get out.
And it's just Uther too, so he could self-divine shield. He's pulled once back, but again, Hao is very fine with him being the tanky member of this team. Uther is one of the few supports you actually want to die, especially post-20. B-Kid, though, receiving a bit of pressure there. Hao has isolated himself. Typically, that's when you want to try and capitalize on a team in their poor retreat, but Naventic unable to do so. Hook not landing, and now we've got ourselves 12 seconds away from what could be the last, depending on how Even in Death plays it, Shrine phase.
So the only heroic ability used from Even in Death in that instance of retreating from Naventic was Cocoon. It will be back up in 20 seconds. Even in Death now are just about to 20. And with the Shrine starting, they will get the initial Skeletal Defenders, the lead going onto the Shrine, while Naventic has to try to figure out how they can get 20. And it looks like the way they're going to try to do that is by going up to the top and trying to push in. They're going to steal the Shaman away from that lane. They're going to push in with this.
Looks like they're going to just leave Falstad, kind of do his own thing up there. It's really not going to have that big of an impact. It's going to draw at least the Dahaka back for a longer period of time. A couple W cooldowns is going to be necessary for him to be able to rid of that Shaman in the long run and deal with the Falstad. And it's a bit convenient considering this shrub you see right below the screen is the only one that we can see Dahaka kind of go to other than the one in the very top right. So it's going to be not as good and possibly a keep play for Naventic, but in the end, it's all about what this Punisher makes happen. What can Even in Death do with this here? They move up, baiting out towards the mid keep. Battery not making anything happen in too much here. Lutano hasn't set focus to the keep. Now he will concentrate onto that. We see Falstad from the flank. He's going to look for the Gust. Will he make the move?
He's starting to step in. He is. He gusts in. Big impact is there too with the Dragon Blade, and so is B-Kid with his Tormented Souls. A Rain of Vengeance hits B-Kid, but Vala will pay for the efforts being taken out, as has Uther. Uther does have redemption, but Ariel's gone down. That's exactly how Team Naventic needed to play that fight out. Gusting in, the keep will be down, but Even in Death are going to lose so many members in the process of getting it.
Skilly, but you have to ask yourself, is this too late? I mean, the fact that they got the Shaman camp on top that nobody was able to prep.
Yeah, and it did not get stopped.
It's never been stopped, which means it's got itself that keep from the beginning to the end. I mean, this is just exactly what we talked about from legitimately minute one. This composition is unstoppable if they get the fight that they want. And the way they needed to be able to do that is with that beautiful flank there coming out from Falstad. I believe that to be iDream. And they made it work. Now can Naventic get the rebuttal and end the game, and more importantly, find themselves one game away from being able to take their very first win in HGC North America Phase 2. Shielding is gone.
Falstad had the isolation on him. He's going to gust in, but Hao is still there. It wasn't the worst, but still the core is falling rapidly. They're trying to get Falstad off of it, but there is still multiple damage dealers on top of this core. Vala only just now came out, but gorged and not able to help defend the core. Team Naventic had been down that entire game with all of the Punishers, but thanks to one perfect flank and winning the fight off of it, as well as having the Shaman plan the entire time, you could see the game plan. If we're able to defend and we kill them, this will be our option to win the game.
I am emotionally torn after that game because I feel like a lot of people at first glance go, we watched Even in Death control that game almost from beginning to end in one fight, and then they end up losing the game. But I almost give more credit to Naventic, the fact that they finally got the adaptation into that fight to realize,
of course,
this is the one we can take and the one we can win by getting the Falstad to flank. The only time iDream ever looked to flank was that very final fight. And even then, it wasn't perfect. You know, the Gust went to one target. Luckily, Malthael had that. Twilight Dream had the other with the Malfurion. So they got the job done. Maybe not as clean as they necessarily wanted, but they were adapting in the middle of a game. And we often talk about how very difficult and how few teams can actually make that happen. And I feel like that very much we should get a lot more credit than maybe they get at first glance, because they were losing the whole game. I mean, it was 20 minutes of watching Naventic lose until they won.
And those 20 talents helped a lot for them, having things like Astral Communion, so that Tomster could make sure he was in the right spot with the Twilight Dream 2. They had the Dragon Becomes Me, so that they could hopefully keep Dragon Blade going as long as necessary to get the kills needed for them to come back in that game. So congrats to Naventic being able to pull ahead in that game after being so massively behind, even in death. And we're talking about the players so far. Let's talk about the Warrior players for the team, specifically Battery and B-Kid. Both of these are leading the charge as the Warriors up in front. B-Kid, though, slightly more takedowns, and that brings his KDA just up a little bit more over Battery. B-Kid has been flexing around a little bit, like we talked about with Zuna. Sometimes Zuna playing what we would consider to be primary warrior, so we can play things like Dahaka, even a Malthael last game.
The one thing that stands out for me has got to be the kill participation. I know I bring that up almost every time we look at stats, but I do think it's a very strong indicator of a power level of a player. KDA is very neat, yes, and it is very relevant, but also is the kill participation, specifically when looking at warriors, because they're the guys who set everything up. Like, almost every kill you should be directly involved in, unless you're just flat out dead. And so to see that disparity between the two, B-Kid sitting in that 90.5 and the 81 on the side of Battery.
81 is fairly low from what we have seen so far, but Battery does have higher siege damage, and he does play heroes like Arthas a lot, so it might just be that, you know, he is sometimes the one who ends up trying to soak off in other lanes, while the rest of the team's getting the kills done, doing the job.
The one caught off on soak duty, you know, somebody's got to do it. It's like taking out the trash. You never want to be the guy, but in the end,
doing the laundry.
Yeah. Screw responsibilities and chores, man. I don't ever want to grow up. I want to talk about video games forever.
Yay! Lucky for us, we get to keep doing that because we have another Battleground ready.